first thing I'm going to need to do is gather the tools I need to saw. So that should be 4 different things. We are going to need a saw, jeweler's saw, a bunch of jeweler's saw blades. This is our bench pin, just a fancy piece of wood, and a C-clamp to attach our bench pin to the table. So we're going to go ahead and start by setting up our workspace. So the first thing I want to do is set up my bench pin right here. And I want the little keyhole cutout area of my bench pin to extend off the table, and really just that much. I don't want it like way out here because then it's unstable. So just this little keyhole off the table, and I'm going to use my C-clamp. If you haven't used one of these in a while, just spin it to clamp, and I'm going to clamp this directly to my table. I like to put this whole part of the clamp underneath the table so it's kind of out of my way. You can see what I'm doing. So we'll clamp that to the table, and it should be nice and secure, like not moving around on you at all. Okay, so that's what I want for my bench pin. So this is what our jeweler's saw looks like. This little tiny saw blade is going to cut through metal. So if there's already one in here, you can keep using it until it breaks. They're very breakable. So this one is good. But if I do need to do another one, I'll show you the process of putting one in. So I'll take this one out really quickly. First thing I need to do is get a blade. So these blades come in this little pack of 12 with a little brass wire wrapped around it, so I need to undo that in order to get one out. So I just need one. And these are very, very small and tiny. Let's see if I can get it to focus on that. If you look at it really carefully, can you see those little teeth on there? So those little teeth are going to cut through metal. And when I put this in my saw frame, I need to put it in a specific way in order to make it cut. So here's my frame. I'm going to be sawing like this. So I want the teeth on the outside of my blade frame, not on the inside pointing in, but pointing out. So the flat side of my blade should be back here, the teeth out here. And I want the teeth pointing downwards and not pointing up. So my saw frame has 3 different places where I can clamp, 3 different movable areas. 2 here that are going to hold my saw blade in my frame, and this one back here just will adjust the size of my frame. So this back one you're not really going to need to mess with, most likely. I'll show you the scenario where you do need to mess with it. But my blade is going to go, I have a stable part of my frame and then a little movable plate right here. And my blade goes right in between those. This little clamp is just going to tighten those 2 together, pinching my blade in there. So we'll put, I'm going to do it sitting down. I like to put my saw frame in my bench pin right here. Hold it in there so it kind of stays in place. Personally, I like to, I don't know if you can see this from your perspective, but hold my frame with my sternum so that I can use both of my hands when putting my blade in. Not necessary, just one way to do it. So yeah, when I put this in, the teeth are going to be like pointing right at my face. So I like to put the bottom one in first, tighten that. So that's what it should look like, right in between those, nice and tight. My teeth pointing downwards just like that. And then I'm going to put it in the top of my frame. So this is the only time where you might need to adjust the size of your frame. You can see the top of my blade right there is within that little boundary. But if your saw frame is too big, your blade might not reach in between those 2 clamps. If your saw frame is too small, your blade could run into that top part, stable part. Let's make it a little more so you can see it better. So that's where I'm going to start. And like I mentioned, we're going to do the second one, whichever one you do second, a little bit differently than the first. So if I just put it in there and tighten it, it's going to be really loose and wobbly, and that is not going to cut through metal. So I do want to put it in there with some tension. So I'm going to hold the end of my saw frame and push it into the table. You can see my frame kind of like compress a little bit. So I'm going to push into the table, keep pushing this whole time, put it in there, tighten it while I'm still pushing, and then I can let go. So that puts a little bit of tension on my blade. You can see it has a lot less slack now. It's a lot tighter. It also should also make this high-pitched sound. If you put it in there without tension, it will thud. So I do want that high-pitched sound. Okay, so my bench pin is set up, my workspace. My saw blade is in correctly, and now I'm ready to start sawing. So a couple of notes as far as how I should be sitting. I want to sit directly in front of my piece when I'm sawing. A lot of people end up like off to the side. That's going to make it much harder to see what you're doing. So right in front of where you are. This space in here, a lot of times the chairs are up all the way. And when that is the case, it's much harder to saw because you don't have the room to do a full down stroke. So I want to make sure my chair is all the way down. And then I also just want to be sitting like comfortably. So my shoulders should be parallel to the table. I'm just kind of have like a relaxed positioning. So I'm going to be doing all my sawing inside of this little keyhole. And when I start, generally I want to be sawing straight up and down like this. But when I start, sometimes it's easier to start at an angle. I'm going to hold my metal down very tightly with my non-dominant hand, whichever hand you're not sawing with. And sometimes it's easier to start by just doing an upstroke to create a little bit of a notch in the edge. So you can see right there, I have a little notch in the edge, and that's going to make it a lot easier to start cutting into my metal. Okay, so now I'm going to start sawing towards my normal positioning. So that's going to be my straight up and down orientation with my blade perpendicular to my metal, so not at an angle like this, straight up and down. And as I pull downwards, I am removing material and making forward progress into my metal. So I'm really just cutting on the downstroke as I pull down. I don't have to push forwards in order to do that. Just a very gentle pull down motion is what is allowing me to cut. So again, a gentle grip. If I'm aggressively gripping and also trying to saw really fast, I'm more likely to end up cutting myself or breaking my blade, which we'll show you in a minute. But nice and relaxed, gentle positioning. So right now I'm only going straight, but when I want to start changing directions, I am going to continue sawing. So if I just turn and try to saw, my blade will be stuck like this and I will not be able to move. So I always need to be moving my saw up and down as I change direction. So 2 motions at once, up and down, and then also starting to turn my metal. As I'm sawing up and down, and that will allow me to turn, create new shapes. I'm being very careful to hold my metal down very tightly. I'm clamping it with my non-dominant hand. This hand is going to get really tired because you aren't used to working those muscles, but I do need to clamp it as hard as I can so it doesn't like flop around as I saw. That flopping motion is what is going to break my saw blade. So whenever possible, holding in 2 locations on either side of my bench pin to help it be a bit more stable and secure. I want to keep my fingers behind my blade whenever possible. I definitely don't want to hold it like this, even though that's a little bit more secure, but a lot of times you're looking where your blade is and not where your blade is like about to slice yourself. So fingers behind. You can put one through kind of to hold on this side. So if I end up getting stuck, like if I try to turn too quickly, the best way to get unstuck is to kind of like shimmy up and down as much as possible. Sometimes you won't move anywhere at first and you'll really have to continue shimmying to get unstuck. I do not want to go side to side because that side to side motion or even front to back motion is what's going to cause my blade to break just like that. Okay, if I break one right there, which I just did, I can either shimmy my way back through, or if I'm just connecting right here, I can start from the edge if I want to. I think I will. Oops. But I also want to talk about corners really quickly. So corners are much more difficult than just doing curves. So I'm going to do one right there, right there. I don't know if you can see that. A few corners just to kind of connect it. Okay, so when I want to do that, I am going to kind of change my technique. So I'm very, very, very gently going to move my blade up and down. I don't know if you can hear the sound difference. Like, it's much quieter because I'm not like actively moving through my metal. I'm really trying to pivot here. So staying in one place, trying to stay in one exact little place on one little point, and slowly turning my metal until I get in my new direction. You can see I'm getting stuck a few times. That's because I'm turning a little bit too quickly. So nice and slowly, and then once I get in my new direction, I can saw like normal. So maybe there you can hear the sound difference. This is my normal sawing, and now again I'm to the place where I want to switch direction. So I'm gonna very, very, very gently just continue to move my blade up and down and slowly turn my metal at the same time, staying in one place, pivoting, changing direction. If I try to go too quickly again, I'll be stuck. So, and I'll unwind a bit to get unstuck. And now I'm in my new direction, so I can start sawing normally again. And I'll do one more. This one I'll do incorrectly, so instead of changing my sawing so it's super gentle, if I still just saw normally and try to change direction, I'm going to end up with more of a rounded corner instead of like a sharp, crisp corner. Also, if you guys need to take a break at any point, you can just undo one end of your blade, get it out of there, and then just kind of hold your metal down, pull your saw blade down, and take a break that way. Okay, let's see if we can focus here. So my first 2 corners are nice and crisp, like pretty decent 90 degrees. If you can see, the second two are more rounded. So that's where I tried to rush through my corners and I didn't focus on staying in one exact point and pivoting. I kind of just sawed normally and ended up with these more rounded versus the sharper ones. Okay, so the last thing for sawing we want to talk about is how to cut a shape out of the center of your piece of metal instead of sawing in through the edge and then cutting the square out. I can drill a hole in the middle of this piece of metal, thread my saw blade through, and cut this out without cutting through the edges. So the first thing I need to do is kind of prepare my metal for drilling. The drill bits that we use are quite small and therefore decently fragile. In the same way our saw blades are fragile. So I want to kind of essentially make a dent to help guide my drill bit through. So wherever I want to make my hole, I want to place the point of my center punch, and then I'm going to use a soft hammer, so like a wooden mallet, to just give it a few taps to make my dent. I don't need to hit it that hard. This is not what's making a hole. I'm just making a little dent. So a little cup-shaped dent, and you can see a little bump on the back from where that dent is. So once I have my metal ready, and if I'm doing a lot of them, I can go ahead and make all my center punches in all of the areas that I want to cut out. And then we are going to discuss our drill press. So this is our drill press right here. And the first thing we want to make sure is that we have the correct size drill bit in there. We have a variety of drill bits. We have some that are much larger than, much larger than the ones that we want to be using. So these smaller ones are more appropriate for what we are doing. And I think the one in there is a little bit small. So I would like to switch that out and just show you how to switch it out if you need to. So you can see our little drill bit right there. And in order to change that, I'm gonna use our chuck key. This little dot goes in one of these 3 holes around here, and these gears interlock with these gears to open up my chuck. So put it in there, righty-tighty, lefty-loosey, so I'm gonna spin it to the left to open this up. Once I get it out of there, like loose, I can also spin this part, and you can see what's holding my drill bit in there is those 3 little prongs. As I open it up, they go upwards and further apart to accommodate a bigger drill bit, and as I tighten it, they move downwards closer together for a smaller drill bit. So I'm gonna go ahead and put this one in there. Okay. So right in between there, up to the threaded part, and then I want to tighten it. So again, I'm gonna use my chuck key right in there, and righty-tighty, so spin it to the right. This one is a little finicky, but as tight as you can. And there's my drill bit in there. I'm going to be drilling on a piece of wood just to help me so I don't have to pull it down quite as far. These 3 handles over here on the side are what's going to pull my drill bit down. This switch on the front is my on-off switch. As I flip it up, that turns it on. Down, we'll turn it off. And a few kind of safety notes here. You guys should wear safety glasses when you do this. You'll see little metal, the metal that gets removed is removed in little spirals, and sometimes they will kind of shoot off these little spirals, and you don't want these in your eyeball. So safety glasses. So again, holding my metal down tightly. Preferably if you can kind of situate it, I want to hold on either side of where I'm drilling my hole, same as sawing. just a little bit extra support. So I can line this up, and then I want to let it go up and turn it on. Sometimes people try to line it up, then turn it on, but I need to be holding my metal down at all times. So if I just turn it on right now, it's going to shoot my metal across the room because nothing is holding it in place. So I want to line it up, turn it on, and then lower my drill bit, kind of go right through my hole, and feel it pop through, let the drill bit come back up, turn it off, and then lastly I can let go. Once I have my hole drilled, I can thread it onto my saw blade. So undo the top of my blade, put it through my hole, and then tighten it as normal. And then I'm able to go ahead and saw this out